and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading the Phaedo. Now, to recap, last time we went over a lot of reflection, but also we explored a principle, as above, so below, or relations stay the same, terms may vary. And we explored the idea of reincarnation. The question for last time was, who is able to do reincarnation? Who can do it? Who can be an active agent in the game rather than passive? So another way of phrasing that question would be, who could actively pursue their destiny in regards to reincarnation compared to those who are chained to fate, passive and not active, who are fated. And of course, those who are actively pursuing it, who are engaged in the kind of study that meets the conditions that we talked about last time, studying the nature of the soul, studying the nature of different dimensions, studying the nature of the good, so that people can make a decision based on what's best, studying the nature of justice and beauty, so they can make a decision based on what's just and beautiful, compared to those who aren't studying and are going based on fate. However they were born and wherever they were born, into what family, society, and religion they were born, that's pretty much going to dictate what they believe about those things. Okay, unless somebody picks up a study and actively pursues it, they are going to be fated to consider, oh, this is what's good to do. It's good to be an athlete. It's good to be a movie star. It's good to be a priest of this religion, and so on. And of course, equally so for virtues and vices. Unless they are actively playing the game, then what they consider virtue is just going to be, again, fated. Now, for someone who is playing the game, studying that kind of thing that can lead towards destiny, they might be able to look at that person and judge. Well, hopefully they're at the stage where they can judge because they've got an art. Someone who can judge not only the way their life is going to play out, if that's what they consider worth doing, if that's what they consider virtue, if that's what they consider good and just, and real and clear. Another couple of key words from the text that Socrates pointed out. But they'll be able to determine what kind of incarnation they'll have next. And Socrates is someone with that art, and one of the reasons why we can make that judgment is he predicted. He said, hey, if you're the sort of person who lives this kind of a life, you're going to come back as a donkey. If you're this sort of person, you come back as a wolf or a hawk. This sort of person, a bee or an ant. And we want to know, okay, we don't want to go back down or go down to a lower incarnation with more ignorance and suffering and all that. We want to go higher. We want to pursue our destiny, our highest incarnation, our highest way of being, our highest grasp of reality, our highest state of mind and understanding, our highest knowledge of self. What is that called? What is that study? What allows us to seek destiny and escape the chains of fate? Last time we talked about, well, how many subjects are out there that study these things? Now, I know there are a lot of people who claim they know what's good. They claim they know what's just. Some are willing to put people in prison based on what they think is justice. Some people are willing to kill others and go to war based on what they think is good. Some people live their whole lives based on what they think is worth doing. In fact, maybe most people, if not all people. But how many people are actually playing the game? So, thanks for joining me in the chat, by the way. Right. There has to be an art to do with how to die, if it's to do with incarnation, and it has to bestow benefit from the chat. So how many people are actually studying up, actually playing the game? One of the theories one of the working hypotheses we're playing with here as we study philosophy, as we awaken it, as we figure out what it is and why it's worth doing, is it's the archetypal hero's journey. It's what we are all here to do ultimately. Everything else is a shadow of it. All mythology uses the template or uses the relations, allowing us to get the cycle of the hero's journey. For anybody who's interested in screenwriting or story writing, the archetypal hero's journey is something that you study at school. Work from Joseph Campbell. I think that's the guy's name. So, why does the hero's journey work? Terms may vary, relations stay the same. Whether it's Luke Skywalker, whether it's Harry Potter, whoever it is, the terms may change, the characters may change. The person offering supernatural aid, the kind of call to adventure may change. The home that you return to may change, but the relations stay the same. It's the same formula. If it's the same formula, there must be an archetype. If there's an archetype, there must be an ideal, and the word we have for that is hyparxis. That's something we looked at last time. So what is the hyparxis of the hero's journey? And why do we want to know that? Because it will tell us what we're really here for. What are we really supposed to be doing in the time we have, in time and space on this planet? What is the true hero's journey, and how do we play that game? Now we can see part of playing that game is necessarily understanding these things that require us to study, understand, not just understand, but verify indirect experience, nous, such as what is the soul, what is the afterlife, what is good, what is just, what is virtue. These sort of things are necessarily involved. What is that game? What is the ideal hero's journey? What is our destiny? What are we here for? Or what is the meaning of life? Socrates has called it the art of the logos. And think about it. How many other studies study these things? Even other philosophies don't claim that you can know such things. Academic philosophies normally say, well, these things are unknowable. It's just about opinions. There is no actual logos, understandable, universally understandable paradigm. There is no actual reality that is knowable in nous. Nobody can experience what it's like to be dead. That's what they say, which is, of course, the opposite of what Socrates is saying. And, of course, there would be no art, no skillful, beneficial use of that paradigm and that understandable order to benefit other people and oneself. Likewise, on the other side of the spectrum, people who are interested in actually experiencing different dimensions normally lack a logos. They lack the logos, really. They might have a kind of way of understanding their own tradition, but ultimately Buddhism, Taoism, things of that nature lack the logos. So fall down on some of the necessary elements for having an art, specifically the logos and dianoia. So what's left? If we reincarnate, there seems to be one thing left we can do to reincarnate well and to avoid reincarnating poorly. That's the art of the logos, true philosophy. Or not just philosophia, the love of wisdom, but philodianoia, the love of true understanding, understanding those things, all of those things in that list. These are all terms within the subject of dianoia, which makes dianoia different from regular understanding, what we think is understanding nowadays. So what? Well, it's interesting to know that we are in a kind of game that can lead us to incarnating well. And that's kind of where we are in the text, because Socrates says this is what philosophy is: the art and practice of death and dying, or the practice, the desire for death and dying, practice of death and dying, the understanding of death and dying, the direct experience of death and dying, lots of things related to death and dying, that we are running with a working hypothesis that you can unify all of those things together with the idea of art. So last time we did a dialectic and we brought out some key terms, and let's bring it up. We brought out some key terms to do with evolution through incarnation. Here it is on the board. And we unified it together with an art. What were those things? Here we go. We have to be studying what's the good, the beauty, and the just, so we can judge what's better. There has to be an understanding of the hierarchy and order, so we can add the experience of this as nous. We can add the understanding of this as dianoia. We have to judge in order to benefit. We have to seek and desire these things. And all of these things we can unify within the synthesis, or the single word art. So that's what we did last time. So we've got a working hypothesis, an if that we can polish up. And if we can come up with a better if, we can throw this one out. That's how we think. Socrates is teaching us how to think as well. So we can say philosophy is not just the understanding of death and dying, not just the experience and knowledge of death and dying, not just the seeking and desiring of death and dying, and the preparation for purification for death and dying, but we can say it's the art. You can unify or synthesize all of those key terms, divisions, into a single word. What's that called? Understanding. Unifying the various parts and understanding how they relate to each other. Unifying that together into a single word, that's understanding. So we have an understanding that we can bring with us to see more clearly, because we see through our understanding. That's why understanding is important. Not only that, understanding this kind of thing is a gateway to contemplation, or the direct experience of those things, if they are experienceable, if they have an essence, ousia, in the realm of being, if they are one of the ideas. And that's called nous. So, what is philosophy? The art and practice of death and dying. And also, within that, hopefully we've been developing a dialectic of our own. What is philosophy and what isn't it? In fact, we've been doing that all the way through together. We can add, well, incarnation. What is philosophy? It's the necessary study for reincarnation. So we are not tied to tragedy and fate to reincarnate poorly, but we can in fact reincarnate closer towards our destiny, or maybe even reach our highest destiny in our reincarnation. And of course, this has to be so if philosophy is, if Socrates is telling the truth, and philosophy is in fact the desire, the practice, the art of death and dying, if that's what true philosophy is. Now, after outlining this, after defining this doctrine of philosophy, Simmias and Cebes is there with Soc and says, hang on a second, that would mean the soul is immortal for it to reincarnate. Not sure about that. Can you prove it? He outlined 4 arguments. If we recall, the using the kind of logos of the back and forth of opposites of the world, If there is a coming to be alive and dying, there should be a coming to be dead and being dead. So there should be, if there is a dying that we can see in our physical world, we can see it, and being alive, there must be a coming to be alive and being dead. Being alive and dying, there must have the opposite, being dead and coming alive, balloons. Otherwise, there would be a peculiar impotence or flaw in the logos of the physical world in just that area. The other argument was our resources. If we have a soul that comes from somewhere, it has to be from somewhere. It can't be from the physical world, otherwise we'd run out of resources. And it has to be secular because of Enderman. We would all end up asleep or as zombies like Enderman. In other words, we can't just come to be and then die and not return again, because everyone would end up dead. And if we use sleep and awake as an analogy, we have to wake up, otherwise everybody would end up being asleep. The fourth argument was the argument for learning as recollection. This is just a recap. I hope if you haven't gone through it, you can go through this playlist on YouTube and go through it yourself. That's important because you shouldn't just trust what I'm saying. This is just a recap. And Socrates says it's most important not to stay at the cognitive functioning of trust. Go through it yourself. Enjoy the puzzles. Do the work. Not work, play. Have fun playing. Go through it. Puzzle it with us together. Because that can make it yours. That can take it from trust to dianoia. Okay, the fourth argument was learning as remembering. In fact, Cebes was able to define that through the dialectic, which was great. He wasn't able to demonstrate the artful mastery of the dialectic, but he outlined the reasoning for that. I think we went through that last time, or maybe the time before. So for arguments for the soul being immortal and reincarnation existing, now that's learning. But what happens when we learn? We're only playing half of the game. That's a kind of perfection. We also have to purify ourselves from what we used to think. Hey, if you grew up strictly religious, not even that. If you grew up in a society which they're not talking about these things and they teach you things like, hey, there is no soul, or after you die, you're just worm food. The soul is just a byproduct of the physical body. It's kind of like music on a guitar is just a byproduct of the physical guitar. It doesn't have its own existence. The way we are taught today. Then even if you've heard those arguments and you trust them, you may be persuaded against them. This, Socrates says, is the cause for the worst kind of defect in the soul. If you once trusted Socrates' arguments for the immortality and reincarnation of the soul, and then somebody comes along and pushes your buttons, knows the kind of mythology, the kinds of beliefs that you grew up with, they might throw you into doubt and you might end up distrusting the logos. And distrusting yourself, because you once thought this to be true, but now you don't. Hang on a second, maybe I'm no good. And the third thing you might end up distrusting, the logos, yourself, and reality. Or maybe reality is just nonsense. Maybe it's out to get me. Maybe it's ununderstandable. Maybe there's no goodness in reality if I can be tricked like this. This is a problem. Therefore, Socrates says, don't blame logos. It's not you, reality, or logos that's the problem. It's that you haven't yet developed the art of logos. So this is what I need to pass on before I die. A bee stings you, then dies and leaves behind its sting. I want to sting you in the best kind of way and leave that behind. And so we put our Sherlock Holmes hats on and deduced, well, that might be the art of the logos. Okay, so the art of the logos needs to judge the logos, not just the true arguments, but also the counterattacks, those things from Simmias and Cebes' background and mythology. That one we just mentioned, There is no soul. It's just a byproduct. It's a kind of harmony. And Cebes is, that was Simius's. Cebes is one which was, even if there is incarnation, maybe being alive is a kind of sickness that wears down your soul. And maybe this is your last incarnation. Or maybe there isn't reincarnation in you. You outlive many physical forms because the soul is, more powerful than the body. But you don't outlive your last body, or you don't outlive your last incarnation. Or in the metaphor, you don't outlive the last jacket you wear. You might outlive many jackets in your life, but not your last one. So the Simius one, Socrates went through, and then Cebes was up. So the argument of harmony, and that gave us an extra little bit of clue to work with. The soul can't be harmony because the virtues are harmony. That's interesting. Then we went into Cebes' argument. Socrates said, where are you at? Or where are you stuck? To pinpoint where he was, a kind of judgment. Picked up the dialectic and then defined it more clearer with his art. By the way, there are two elements you really want Cebes to learn, that the balloons, to learn that the soul is immortal and indestructible. More balloons. We went through the immortal argument. That was the 3 can't be even. In the realm of ideas, in being, aspects of being, you can't have one with the opposite. We actually heard that before. Equal can't be unequal. In the physical world, sure. I can look at 2 equal sticks. You could be looking from a different angle. And so what looked equal to me looked unequal to you. So we can say, oh yeah, it's kind of both, depending on your perspective, thumbs up. But in reality, in the realm of being, equal can never be unequal. And he's using 3. Odd can never be even. Not only odd, that which brings odd necessarily, like 3. 3 doesn't have an opposite. It withdraws from or is destroyed in the presence of. Like cold withdraws from or is destroyed in the presence of heat. But if there's something that brings along also a fire, withdraws or is destroyed in the presence of coldness. Or 3 withdraws or is destroyed in the presence of evenness, even though 3 doesn't have an opposite. It brings along an idea which has an opposite. Now I use the word idea because it's not a concept like an idea. Idea is a Greek word which means to behold. This is the word that has been mistranslated over the years as forms to misunderstand Socrates and Plato. But thankfully we have the Greek, so we don't have to fall into the trap they're falling into. Idea, an aspect of being. And we've gone into that as well. We've got a whole list. We've called them that which we stamp the seal, that which absolutely is. We've also talked about how they have a hyparxis too. And that argument also applies to the soul. So we're learning about being and we're learning about the soul. So the idea you bring in with, like 3 brings in the idea of odd, can't be in the presence of even. So from that, so we've looked at equal, we've looked at 3, we've looked at fire. So we've got the particulars. You look at the particulars, you look for a pattern. How do we look for patterns? Oh, necessarily there must be that principle. Terms may vary, relations stay the same. So the terms fire and cold and hot, 3 odd and even, sticks equal and unequal. Hey, even beauty and ugliness, we talked about that earlier. These terms vary, but the relations stay the same. That allows you to use one as an analogy for another, and it also allows you to look at all of the particulars who follow that same pattern and hypothesize what's the principle of that pattern, which would have a higher existence to cause the particulars. from the particulars to the thing itself, from the adjectives to the noun. What is required for this kind of thinking and looking for patterns and discovering patterns? The principle, as above, so below. Terms may vary, relations stay the same. Necessarily. And that's what we looked at last time. So, from those particulars, we hypothesized the principle and then applied it to the soul. What does soul have an opposite of? Doesn't have an opposite, okay? But what does it bring in with it? Brings in life. Soul is that which brings in life to a body. Therefore, what's the opposite of life? Does that have an opposite? Yes, it does. Death. Therefore, the soul must run away or is destroyed. Well, yeah, withdraw or is destroyed in the presence of death. So the soul is deathless. The same way 3 is uneven. Or equal is unequal. So we came to a conclusion, therefore, the soul must be immortal. Okay, but the second part of the argument is indestructible, because the soul has to withdraw or be destroyed in the presence of death. And the argument that Seebees was okay with was, well, if the soul is immortal, which means eternal, and that is destroyed, well then there'd be nothing that is indestructible. So yeah, I trust that the soul is, well, I don't distrust. We're talking about immortal or uneven, framing it negatively. Well, he is framing his thinking negatively. I don't distrust the soul is indestructible. We were kind of like, well, that's not a very good standard for thinking. Because Socrates said you had to be able to prove and know that the soul is immortal and destructible. Otherwise, it's a rational fear that when you die, your soul is destroyed. Now, of course, Socrates said, by the way, for those who spent a life pursuing vice, the destruction of the soul at the end of their body would be a windfall for them. Because you can't destroy the self, of course, so the soul, whatever they've nurtured in their life that we call the soul, our psyche, has no consequence on the development of their self. So you can do whatever you want, and those who are in the position to enact out their vice with impunity in this physical world, happens to be a kind of world where this happens, that impunity acts eternally. So there's no justice would follow. So what's all this talk about virtue? Why live a good life if you can just be as horrible as you want and you're dead and that's the end of it? So it'd be a windfall for those with vice. That's one of the things Socrates mentioned. So therefore I wouldn't lament, because Socrates is about to be murdered by the state. I wouldn't lament if my soul was destroyed. Could be like, oh yeah, because I'd just lose my ignorance from self. Notice the self isn't on the board as something that can be destroyed. That's an interesting puzzle. Why not? Why have they all accepted that the soul is not in this level of discussion? Beyond immortality and indestructibility? That's a question. All right, so we have to prove and know the soul is both immortal and indestructible, not just not distrust. So Seebees is substituted out. Simmias comes back in, and we were judging Simmias last time. He's not as familiar with Socrates as Seebees is, but at least in this area, he's not content with just trust, which is a higher level of thinking. And of course, we talked about how If there is a paradigm of understanding, not only does it apply to dimensions of reality or ontology, it also applies to causes, it applies to ways of thinking, it applies to how we think or cognitive functions. So ignorance or prejudice, simple belief, trust, supernatural belief or faith would be right down the bottom. To believe something that cannot be proven or is against evidence. Prejudice, even lower than that. Objectively false, disproven by evidence and reason. Simple beliefs above prejudice, and faith being really low. Faith to believe something that is not provable or has been sometimes disproven by evidence and reason. Usually as a sign that you are part of a group that is bound together by a saving belief. A group that is bound together by a saving belief is the definition of religion. Of course, a lot of people don't like giving a definition to religion because that allows you to see it, because we see through our understanding, and allows you to judge. And a lot of people don't like religion to be judged because that would mean we can go beyond ignorance and the kind of manipulation and abuse and the tyranny and war that has happened for thousands of years in the name of blindly obeying some guy with a funny hat. Because the virtue apparently is to just believe him even though reason and evidence says that's absurd. So I can't remember the guy's name, there's a famous philosopher who defines religion as, or faith as, absurd belief. Why? Because it would be absurd to say, believe in this thing, even though I can't give you any evidence or proof for it. Now we can take it one step further and say, well, actually, we have objective proof against most faiths, but they have to be ignored as well, so it makes it even worse. That's not an attack, that's just the way it is. But that's good because we can recognize how faith is situated next to trust in the logos, next to dianoia, and next to direct experience of dianoia. The cognitive functions can also be placed on a ladder of development. Why? Because it's the hyparxis. It is the ladder of all ladders. That's what it would mean if there is a logos. And the mastery of that, therefore, would make it not just the art of cognitive functions or the art of dimensions, but the art of all arts, the hyparxis art, which adds more credence to the idea that this is the thing that we should be studying, mastering while we are here. The art of the logos. Now, this is important because while we're learning about these people and judging Simmias as not content with just trust, he wants to understand better, we can apply it to ourselves. What are the certain false beliefs that I've taken for granted? Or just simple beliefs that I've taken for granted? I don't know if they're false. I'm taking them on trust. Or I've been told to not use my mind and just have faith. When are the times that somebody says, oh, by the way, blindly obeying these people or these beliefs, even though there's no way of showing it to be true, or all evidence and reason points in the other direction. Oh, that shows you're one of the team. When has that come up? Is there beliefs against yourself? I'm no good. Hang on a second. Why? Well, everyone in my family treats me as though I'm no good. But the evidence doesn't suggest that. Or they've never proven it. They've just treated me as though it was true. And kind of to be bound together in my family is to go along with this on faith that I must be rubbish. Or no one in my family has ever questioned our religious beliefs or our societal beliefs. Therefore, understanding must be rubbish. But whenever we break a toaster, we want to understand the toaster. Whenever I get good marks in school, it's when I understand the subject. So the evidence seemed to be pointing against understanding being rubbish. So this faith that binds together the group called the family, that justifies the way of life my loved ones have lived, particularly my parents, might be a low cognitive functioning, lower than actual beliefs based on evidence and reason, scientific beliefs, lower even than trust in the logos, lower than understanding or dianoia, and of course much lower than nous. And phronesis can be in there somewhere, and of course there's a question, what is beyond nous? Because Socrates, in outlining the doctrine of philosophy, doesn't end with separating the soul from the body. It just affords you a separation from problems, separation from distractions from the physical body to do philosophy better. So we have that question open. What are the cognitive functions beyond even nous? That's a puzzle. And that's what we are using to judge Simmias, judging him by his logos. He said it was not sufficient for him. And here's a logos telling us, okay, what ladder can I point out? Oh, this ladder, cognitive functions. He is looking for something beyond trust. So therefore I can judge him against Cebes. Now, of course, this itself might be a kind of faith or cultural mythology that you are speaking up against by judging. Why? Well, in a world filled with people who want to pretend to be wise, because we all seek that ladder, but often it's more comfortable or easier to accept prejudice or racism or the false beliefs you grew up with. Oh, this is what makes me wise, just being like my dad, and not actually seeking the mastery of the art of the logos. So because there is an appeal to that, which is a kind of energy or force to maintain our problems, that by simply judging Simmias and Cebes, you might be speaking up against that, because those people who want to cosplay as the knower, everyone who's not in the art of philosophy, art of the logos, by the way, it seems, which is why we have to keep in mind we are following Socrates' second search for causes, because even if you are a lover of learning, if you stay learning about the physical world, you cannot reach true wisdom. Philosophia comes after philomathesis. Wisdom is logos, number one, and directed towards being number two, and has an art number three. The very three things he said people who claim to be wise and have understanding reject. True today as it was 2,000 years ago. So unless they are in philosophy and developing the art of the logos, they don't know, but they want to feel like they know, because our soul drives towards it. What's that principle? Terms may vary. It's not true wisdom. It's not true knowledge. It's not true understanding. Relations stay the same. They still will seek it through their soul. That's why it's the human quest. That's why we can say in being in this game, we're entering the human race. It's not just our destiny, it's a destiny for all men. Relations stay the same. They still want to be wise. They want knowing. Only the terms are false. Oh, what's wisdom? Beating up the villain at the end of a movie. Yelling at your kids the way I was yelled at by my parents. That kind of thing. Throwing bad guys in prison, shooting them or something. And of course, in developing the art of the logos, we realized, oh, hang on a second, this argument of three cannot sustain its opposite also applies to these false ideas of justice. If you want humans to be good, you can't bring in the bad, because that's the opposite. Goodness will flee, as well as that goodness within the soul, which necessarily comes along with it. So you can't make people good by doing bad or violence or punishment, the things that are easy to do, because any idiot can whack someone if they have power. Any idiot can order a drone strike if they're in that position. Any moron can say, oh, let's just kill things that are different. You can be the lowest most worthless person, as Socrates would say, even though they're rare. If you had a contest for who's most worthless, that'd be rare because everybody is somewhere between their problem and excellence. But any idiot can be violent. And if that's what you are selling as knowledge, because violence is necessary to maintain oppression and injustice, then it can be appealing. That's why people like Republicans or conservatives are racist and are pro-guns and pro-violence and things, because it's very easy for people who have been exploited and are not given the position of much wealth or education. It's easy for them to cosplay as knowing through violence because anyone can do it, which is why they say lock her up or bomb them and that kind of nonsense. They want to be vigilantes, don't they? Now, of course, if there's an art, these would be the people who are being most manipulated by those in power, who we should care for the most. So we're not criticizing, well, we're judging them. We're not blaming them. It's different. We're judging them to look at the causes. Yes, anybody, if they grew up in a country, in a place with a spiritual mythology that's good versus evil, and good wins by punching evil in the face, and that's what Jesus wants. Any culture where there is wealth inequality, then you're struggling to survive. There's less time to do philosophy and think and reason. Any country where education has been gutted, social resources have been gutted, would be still seeking knowledge. Therefore, can be easily manipulated by someone who comes and says, oh yeah, you're better. Well, how did I climb that ladder? Oh, you're white. Oh, I don't have to climb the ladder. Good, I don't have time to, or the funds to, or the resources to, or the education to. Well, how do I be good now that I'm better? How do I feel like I have wisdom? Oh, violence. Easy. Well, that's easy. I don't need any education to hit things with a stick. Kick my dogs or beat my children, or be a petty tyrant in my job if I have a management position or if I'm a boss of a business. Easy. So this is the appeal to fascists, what we call today the right wing or the conservatives, or conserving the way that things were, conserving problems, not progressing or developing or learning. So there is an appeal that's very seductive, that allows for grifting. Notice there's a huge internet community right now of grifters, and they all appeal to the same sorts of people. Racism, violence, hatred, because these things are easy. It appeals to those who are most in need. So they're still seeking hierarchical development, they're still seeking knowing, but they are in need. They don't have the resources, they don't have the education, they are suffering from wealth inequality because of those people who are in power because of this kind of manipulation. So as a result, there is a cultural and often religious mythology that says, hey, judging is bad. Why? Because they don't want to be judged. Don't use your mind to judge me, because then you'll see that there's no reason for me to be knowing. Reason why violence is good. Reason why racism is good. Right-wing fascism is good. There's no reason for it. So don't judge. Don't judge me. Don't judge lest ye be judged. That kind of crap. So, but of course, anyone with an art, if you have an art of medicine, you have to judge the healthy body. If you have an art of flying a plane, you have to judge whether or not the plane is sound. You have to judge whether or not you're on the right course. You're flying the right course. Equally too, out of the logos, you have to judge whether or not you're healthy and whether or not you're on the right course. We demand this kind of judgment from all other arts. The difference is we have to recognize the counterattacks, the problems, the human problems, divisions, illnesses, that prevent us from using this kind of judgment to that which is most important, more important than a plane, more important than a healthy body, the health and excellence of our soul. So by judging the logos, judging ourselves, judging that inner voice, judging society, judging beliefs, and judging simius and sebes, you might be speaking out, being different to the crew, to the clan, to the religion, to the mythology, to society, and you might feel it's wrong to judge. So this is something we have to purify ourselves from. If you think it's wrong to judge someone as healthier than another person, then you can't be a doctor. Someone comes in with cancer, well, I wouldn't dare judge you as ill. That would be rude. You're just as healthy as the next person. You would lose your license. You couldn't call yourself somebody with an art if you acted in that way. So that's good to know. So if you are doing it, good for you. We have to be different. We have to learn and grow. In fact, this desire to stay with what's familiar is a byproduct from our human evolution. We can reason through this. If we didn't fear the differences of those things outside the cave, we might wander out and get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger before we developed reason, before we could develop logos. So inside cave good, outside cave bad and scary is the kind of thinking that allowed humans to survive the kind of specific and peculiar conditions of its evolution up until now. Now it's a solution that no longer works and is causing problems. And that's the kind of in-group, out-group thinking that fascists appeal to, that people who want to have power over others appeal to. The cause of problems is not actually the cause, because to judge causes is part of the art of the logos. It's actually people who are different cave than you, people who different color or different society and so forth. So we are looking at the causes for this ignorance within the history of humanity. We're judging based on causes. This is part of the art of the logos. And so today, if you are judging simius and sebes, I want to acknowledge, you might be like, oh, this feels wrong. How can I judge people? Isn't that rude or impolite? We never judge our masters whether or not they have an art. We never judge whether king or politician deserves to be there because they have a knowledge of the ideal and understanding of the paradigm, can use it specifically to benefit not them, but their patients. We never judge rulers or kings or presidents like that. So to judge in this way, isn't it bad? No. It's necessary. In fact, we are playing out the implications of not having the art of the logos. This is the side B of the dialectic. If the art of the logos wasn't exist, what would you have? Thumbs up. You would have terrible things. War, inequality, fascism, all of the things we suffer through today because we don't demand an art of the logos for anybody in charge. Why not? Well, because of this. But fortunately, we have Socrates, who saw all this. He gave us all the pieces. He outlined it. He could predict it. Why? Because it's obvious. It's fate. If you have the art of the logos, if you have the art of the medicine, oh yeah, it's obvious that your liver is going to fail because you're an alcoholic. Well, that wasn't obvious to me because you don't have the art of medicine. Same too with the art of the logos. Oh, it's obvious that these are the sorts of people who are going to the grifters that have power and money today. The people who say there is no understanding, there is no knowledge, and you can't judge. The self is not the highest goal. They religious grifters, right-wing grifters, marketing. They don't pursue those things. People in charge, they don't claim to have an art. They try and appeal to the kind of prejudices that you have. Inside cave good. They offer the shadow of the ladder of development. Oh, if you vote for me, I will pretend that you're better, more hierarchically up the ladder, thumbs up. by being racist. Oh, I'm going to be stealing from you and making your life objectively terrible. But who cares? You get to feel superior for some time. Isn't that what you seek? Don't you seek knowledge? So Socrates could predict it. We can listen to him. We can read his words. We are not gatekept by mistranslations. We can understand the art ourselves, and we can do what's needed to solve human problems and reach our highest excellence. Because we have the text with the good translation and the actual Greek. And we can ask the question, how could Socrates see 2,000 years into the future? And can we see 2,000 years into the future from where we are if we had this art? Not just for humanity, but for our souls. That's the macrocosm. Okay, terms vary, relations stay the same. Society, it's good to want to make a society better. Create the conditions for more philosophy. But the most important thing is our souls. This life is very small in comparison to eternity. And it may take time for other people to wake up to the art of philosophy. Hopefully this channel gains traction, and these ideas gain traction. But the most important thing is our soul. How can we use the art to predict the future of our souls? How can we recognize the fate of our souls? How can we be an active, not passive, participant in the game for our souls? How can we actively seek our highest goal, our destiny for our souls? How can we live well and die well while we're alive, interestingly enough? How can we master the art to know how to reincarnate better for our souls? All of those things we should be writing down, and we can unify under the question, what the heck is the art of the Logos, and how can it do all those things for our souls? So that's why we want the art of the Logos. Wow, 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 wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow.
And that's where we are in the text. Cebes has been tagged out. Simmias is in. Hopefully he has more of these questions and he wants to know more about these sorts of things, mastered the art of the Logos. Let's see where Socrates takes us. And let's see if we can do our best to match him. Because in doing so, if Socrates has the art of the Logos, which is our working hypothesis, so far it seemed to be harmonious with everything he is doing and saying. If he has the art of the Logos and we match him, then we are bringing ourselves to that level of excellence too. Doing what we are here to do, master the art of the Logos. Let's play. So, one of the things in an art is encouraging questions. Socrates began by saying, hey, does anybody else have any questions? And Simmias and Cebes were like, no, we don't want to bother you. No, of course there's no bother. I'm like a swan singing because I'm happy about where I'm going next. Does anyone else have any questions? He encouraged them. Any objections? And if you can see it better, I'll follow you. In fact, this second search for causes that brought Socrates from lover of learning, philomathesis, to lover of wisdom, philosophia. He had questions his teacher couldn't answer. And this is one of the things we're following. How do we get into philosophy? Second search for causes. Anyone can play. If you see better, Socrates is willing to follow you along. It's not a personal thing, it's the Logos. The Logos can come from anywhere. So there's preciousness. Oh, but these are my precious opinions. They're not, they're opinions. It's not the same as you. Because you can have higher cognitive functions. You can have nous. And hey, the opinions you had as a kid, they're not the same as you have now. Are you less of yourself? It's important that we change our opinions. It's learning. Now, it's difficult when people say, oh no, you are defined by your opinions. Religion, bound by a saving belief. That is based on faith, which means it is not provable. Or against proof. Well, if you define yourself by it, you're in trouble because you cannot be your opinions. You have opinions. So you say, I am a Mormon. I am a this. I am a that. No. You have that. And you should be able to ask questions. So you can grow and learn. That's what we're here for, climbing that ladder. You can't be stagnant. Another word, conservative. To progress. So people who say, I am a this, they're in a lot of trouble because they are not an opinion. They have an opinion. I am a Mercedes. No. You have a Mercedes. No, but it's my identity. You are not your car. But it gives me loyalty within a clan. That's on the ball. That's right. People who want to play the knower or manipulate you will say you will not get acceptance unless you identify with this false belief. That's the nature of Pathologos. And we want to go beyond belief, so we can always ask questions. Always ask questions and encourage questions the same way Socrates is encouraging them. Keep the conversation rolling. This is the bumper sticker. Keep the conversation rolling. All the way to his last breath, Socrates kept the conversation rolling. He even said, hey, if anybody else can see, you lead the conversation, I'll follow. It doesn't matter. Because it's the logos. It's not about people. So when people say, who are you to say? Wrong question. What is to say? It's not a who question. Right, sophists are often fast to anger. Right. Because this can often be a display of what it means to be knowing. I must know because I'm as angry as my tyrant teacher was. And of course, if you have a society of those people who think that image of knowledge and not the art of the logos is knowing, and you have a ruler who imitates them, then you get a Putin or a Trump or a fascist. Look how angry that person is. They must be right because my dad was angry when he appeared to be right. Inside cave is truth, outside cave is false or bad. Okay, so this is the theme of the text as well, because Simius and Cebes have personal beliefs, personal mythologies. The argument of the soul's harmony felt true, seemed probable. You don't outlive your last jacket from Cebes. Felt true. Was convincing, got him to doubt himself, reality, and the logos, the three biggies. Okay, the three big terms, the three excellence of the self: self-logos, self-being, and the one self. So we want to go beyond belief, literally. Okay, let's see what he says. Okay. Cebes' conclusion was, how could anything not accept destruction if the immortal being a everlasting accepted destruction? Kind of a weak argument. Everything would be destroyed if the immortal can be destroyed. Every human would agree to that. Is that a standard? It's a popular belief? Uh-oh. I don't have anything else to say. No questions. Nor can I distrust the logos. That's his standard. And because we are learning the art of the logos, we're looking at terms. Terms may vary, relations stay the same. So the terms can be from all sorts of different ladders, but because it's the same relations, then you can judge him based on what terms he uses. Is he talking about trust? So if you're talking with a friend and they might not be religious, but in the whole conversation, they keep using words like trust and belief. And hang on a second, I can judge you where you're at. Oh, but isn't that bad? Absolutely not. It's the best thing you do. If you don't judge people, how can you relate to them most appropriately and beneficially? And also for your own safety. Socrates said, hey, if you trust people who are untrustworthy because you don't judge them with the art, you might end up thinking all humans are bad and hating humans. So too with the logos. It's very important. We put an end to this thou shalt not judge nonsense. What we should say is thou shalt judge with an art as best ye can. And because we have said ye and thou, it sounds fancy and it must be true. Thou shalt not judge. Thou shalt judge always as best ye can with the art of the logos. And then it sounds fancy and it must be true. Okay? Simmias was not as interested in the opinions of everybody else. By the way, isn't this game fun? Isn't it fun to be able to understand the world? Isn't it fun to be able to understand the cause of our problems? Isn't it fun to share in chat your experiences, what you've seen, how you're developing, how you're growing, to see that there's actually a meaning in our world, to see that you can improve. And it's day by day. Yeah, it is fun and step by step. But what else are we here to do but have fun in this game? To find out that everything is understandable. Literally, that's the logos. To find out that there's a significance to us learning it. And hey, whatever progress we make, it's going to have an effect on our soul if we keep going. And at the end of it, we'll reach eternity and it'll be worth it, maybe. To be engaged in a kind of dialogue where questions are encouraged, things are understandable, there is a knowing, and there is an art. I think it's fun. I think it's fantastic. Okay, and fun to judge. How unfun it is not to judge. Imagine watching a sports game. I don't think any team is better than the other team. I think every point is the same and every team is the same. The referees are all equally good. Both teams are equally good. They should just shake hands at the beginning and not even play the sports ball. How boring would it be if we didn't judge? But we can judge. And maybe even some optimism. If we can learn the art of the logos, we can have more fun, and maybe that can have an influence on the world. All right. Any human being would agree to that, says Simmias. Says Cebes. Simmias says, well, I don't really care about humans as much. I have a low valuation of human frailty, so I don't really care if every human being is on board or not. I have distrust on behalf of myself because I don't care what people can be dumb. Look at it. Simmias is judging people. Cebes is not. Every human would agree to that. Didn't Socrates say every human was somewhere in between worthlessness and the ideal? Every human was somewhere in between this ladder up and this ladder he calls worthlessness, or we say is the shadow. Every human is somewhere here. Why the heck is Cebes going along and saying, oh, everyone would agree to this? So CBs is not judging. CBs is trusting. Whereas Simius says, I recognize human frailty. So we can judge Simius as doing better than CBs. It's important. And we would expect Socrates to be judging both his friends as he goes. Okay? I have distrust on behalf of myself. Okay? Socrates says we require clear examination if it's going to be trustworthy. We're not rejecting trust, but we have greater reasons for trust when we understand and when we know. And if we follow the logos, the self becomes clear. We will seek no further. That's good. Maybe there is an end to our destiny. So, calling in the virtues, it's just for us to do this, to use courage. If the soul is immortal, she needs to care for the sake of all this time which we call life, but also for the sake of all time. Okay, so if we do have a soul, it's not just for this life, and it has to care for yourself. By the way, if you're not judging people, you're not caring for yourself because you can be getting conned. Don't just do whatever Jordan Peterson says, or whatever right-wing grifter's saying, or clergyman, or guy with the funny hat, or even parent. You have to care for yourself. Socrates says you have to judge, but also for all of time. To maybe even be able to judge what is good and true in your incarnations. The danger would appear terrible if one does not care for self. Okay, he just reiterated. Danger. Danger, danger, danger. Danger is terrible if you do not care for yourself. Let's highlight that. Hey, when you cross the street, do you judge the speed of traffic? Would the danger be terrible if you didn't? Okay, but it goes beyond even crossing the street. For if death was an escape from all, then dying would be a windfall for the wicked to be freed from the body and at the same time of the wickedness or the vice of their soul. But since it has now come to light as being immortal, there will be no escape from self or from vice except the salvation as becoming as good. Number 1, phronesis. Number 2, not just reaching the good, but to integrate it into your functioning, phronesis, the virtue of all virtues. And it's throw some more potatoes into your stew, phroni motatin, which means the ideal of phronesis. For the soul goes to the realm of the invisible, possessing nothing else than her pi day. Every day is a pi day, which is a spiritual education, which we are thinking maybe is the art of the logos, and our nurture, which seems to be the integration of the art of logos into our functioning and thinking, into our desiring, our moving, our thinking, and our functioning, justice, the 4 virtues, at all times, using the art of logos in everything you do. Walking the walk and talking the talk, as Socrates said, of the art of the logos, not imitating others. Don't walk or talk that way, he says, as Simius is concerned about the opinions of others. Okay, we bring with us only our education and our nurture, which is the virtues and phronesis, so our education. So maybe we can see 2 dyads here, good and phronesis, education and nurture. Our education might be about the good, which we said is needed for the art, and our nurture might be about phronesis. That seems to fit with the nurture of the virtues, and which are said to be a great benefit and also harm. There is a harm that you can go through. You want to make yourself better, but also there is a harm from the very beginning of that the journey in the place yonder. Now look, journey, make it purple. Separating from the body or dying is not the end. There's a journey. So if there is a fourth dimension, which of course there's Noose, there's probably a fifth, sixth, seventh maybe. There's a journey in that place yonder. You have to keep going. And what will help you in that journey? Well, at the start of the text, Socrates, let's go back, Providence. Okay, the very first judgment of Socrates at the beginning of the text was Phaedo, our narrator, is asked by Socrates, who's the first guy. Socrates said, "Hey Phaedo, were you there at the death of Socrates? What can you tell about it? Use every detail." As exactly as you can. Phaedo said it was a wonderful experience. I did not feel pity. He appeared like a good Daemon. That's been a big question right from page 3. In his disposition, state of mind, and logos. Understanding and state of mind. That's interesting. He met his death, his end, fearlessly and nobly. And it occurred to me that neither in the place of Hades, this is the word Hades, which is afterlife, the place of the invisible. It's been given a lot of translation, but it's the same, A-I-D-O-U. Is it I-O-U? Let me just quickly nail down the pronunciation of this, which we can because we have internet. Phaedo, which is the afterworld. Okay, in that place he will be with divine providence and farewell. So two things. So he is doing well and he would have guidance. So he's doing well himself and he will have this divine guidance of goodness, providence. So right at the beginning, he is going to be doing something in a journey, faring well on his journey, having divine providence in that journey. So the kind of benefit we get from our paideia of the art of the logos, our nurturing of the virtues, culminating in phronimoteton, throw more potatoes in, phronimoteton, be as phronesis as possible. The fifth virtue, the golden coin virtue that you trade the other virtues in for, okay? That our nurture and our education can benefit or harm us in that journey next. Let's keep reading. We are told in this way that accordingly, when each person dies, the Daemon, biggie, as we saw it, we just read, he appeared like a great Daemon. What the heck is a great Daemon? The Daemon of each soul. So now we're learning about what it is, okay? The Daemon is of each soul. And very important. It was allotted to them while living, okay? Each of us, therefore, says Socrates. Okay, so what is Socrates doing? He's teaching us the art of the logos. He's teaching us how to think. He's teaching us how he got from lover of learning to lover of philosophy. Second search for causes. He was let down by the teachers of his time, as we are today. Teaching us about the realm of being. He's teaching us about our education and our nurture. He's also passing on some things. Here are some facts. I'm going to actually just tell you, I'm going to drop some truth bombs on your asses too. One of them is, we all have a Daemon. Wow. That's amazing. Wow. And it's allotted to us. Wow. Who's dispensing these Daemons? Who's dealing these cards? That's a question. Hopefully we'll add that to our question sack as we carry with us. Okay? While living, we have it. Does that mean we lose it when we die? This very Daemon tries to lead them to a place, to the unseen. Okay, so now we know about what it does. It leads us to this fourth dimensional realm. We can call it Hades. We can call it the realm of being. Where those who have been gathered together, okay, that's a key word. It's in italics. Why? Because when Socrates talked about his, let's read it. Gather. This was his, doctrine of philosophy. This is his one in one paragraph. He gave us the whole thing, so we've been kind of expanding that as we go. What is he? By the way, he says we prepare our dianoia. This is a lover of learning. The upgrading, right? Lovers of learning. So we prepare our dianoia so we can be liberated by the divine self. It's a kind of purification. It takes our phronesis away from the body. So we do have phronesis, just not the ideal phronesis. There's another puzzle. To make us more like separate from our problems, lead us into noesis. Okay, dianoia brings us, the dianoia of each self, eidos, brings us close to noesis until the divine self liberates us. All of this brought together in a paragraph, which was, where is it? How far away am I? Here it is. This purification is what we mentioned in the logos, to separate the soul from the body as far as possible. 1, to be accustomed to gather herself together from all quarters. 2, there's the gathering together. There's the word in Greek. To collect self by self out of body. 3, balloons. To dwell alone by self as far as she is able. 4, both now and in the future. 5 steps in his yoga, in his method for this liberation and separation of the soul from the body, which is actually death. It's death. It's what death is. So you're knowing about death. So this stuff, nobody's actually died and come back to tell us about it. No, literally, this is what philosophy is. It's been a whole thing for a long time. I say that because the people who reject the logos, reject the realm of being, and reject the self or the art, often say, well, we can't know. So those, below that line on that ladder, we can't know the line where you are open to nous and the logos, because, well, how do we know what happens when you die? Nobody's come back to tell us about it. Well, yeah, literally there have been lots. And it's just a standard argument that's thrown out there. So this is practicing philosophy in the right way, this 5-step yoga. And this is the self exercise. So the highest exercise of the philosophers. This is all the way back on page 17. So that's been brought together now on page, where are we? Done so much work. 85. Gathered together. That was step 2. Was it step 2 or step? Should have this. We should know. We should memorize it actually. Back to 17. Separate the soul, number 1, from the body. Gather together, number 2. Collect self by self. There's our self by self dialectic language. While out of the body. Does that mean we do the dialectic while out of the body? Interesting. Dwell alone as far as you are able, both now and in the future. So gather herself together was number 2. Okay, so just tying that together. There's a reason why he dropped that word in. Okay, the Daemon leads us to that realm of the unseen, where those who have been gathered together, so maybe we have a greater understanding of what's meant by that, by going back. After being judged, talking about judgment today, aren't we? There's a judgment. So this art of the logos is actually applied to us. So if this whole, is don't judge, hang on a second, we are going to be judged. So not only is it irrational and allows for fascism and tyranny because we're not judging the art of the logos being present or absent in our leaders, whether it's the family you're born into or society, or your own soul, are you being led by that which has an art of the logos? Are you developing the art of the logos? Does the Daemon have the art of the logos? Are you following your Daemon? But if you're going to be judged, then hey, don't you want to be able to do that yourself? if you're going to take a math exam, don't you want to know what the criteria is so you can prepare? Okay, you're going to be judged. They must proceed with that guide that has been appointed to lead them there from here. So it's leading them, so it has leads us to that place is the role of the Daemon. It's a guide. But they're having undergone that which they must undergo and stayed there the appointed time, another guide leads them, that's interesting, leads them back safely here after many and long-lasting periods of time. So this is what we would call reincarnation. So there's some time you undergo and you stay there. And you're led back. After many and long-lasting periods of time. But that journey is thus not as Aeschylus Telephos says. Everybody knows Aeschylus Telephos. I think I remember them talking about Aeschylus Telephos on the Top of the Pops, the MTV Movie Awards last night. Aeschylus Telephos. Everyone knows Aeschylus Telephos. We all remember that great song. Pick up your Aeschylus telephone. Aeschylus Telephos. I need to call you to say that I love you. That song. Everybody knows that. So of course we know this. It's not what he says, or she, for he says that it is one single path which leads to the unseen place. But it has come to light for me to be neither simple nor one. Neither simple nor one. It's not a simple path, and there's not just one path. For then there would be no need for guides. Interesting. So we're guided to a place. There's a judgment upon reaching that place, and there are things we can be harmed or benefited based on our education and our nurture, and we undergo and stay there for some time, and then we're led back. For there would be no way one could miss the mark. There. Now, I'm going to see what this word is. Miss the mark. I say that because one of the great betrayals or injustices in our world is to translate the word sin as some sort of innate evil, innate badness in self. And the word is to miss the mark. Diamatui. Diamatui. And I think it's the word amatui. Yes, dia amatui. Amatya. Okay, here we go. Dia amatui. Go astray. Amatui. Okay, how could anyone miss the mark if there were only one path? But now it appears likely to have many branches and circuits. And I report this from the sacred rites. Okay, so he's sharing something. He's just telling us stuff now, which is great. Nobody's come back from the dead to tell us what happens. No, literally, read the Phaedo. He doesn't just give you clues to figure it out and develop the outer logos to your own understanding, through your own dialectic. He actually tells you a bunch of stuff too. I report this from the sacred rites and the sure signs of the common laws here. Okay, so he's gone through the rites. We've talked about that before. The rite, the mystical rite that makes philosophy the one true spiritual mystical tradition. That culminates in the changing from the four virtues into the virtue that includes phronesis. And there are sure signs as well. From the common laws here. So there's a question, what does he mean by common laws? Maybe what we are doing, we're talking about seeing patterns in the understandable laws of the universe, the laws of music, the laws of cognitive function, the laws of development. The logos playing out as the causal laws here. Maybe, hypothesis. Thus, the well-ordered and mindful, there's our phronesis word. The well-ordered, okay, well-ordered of course refers to the virtues and sound-mindedness or temperance. And phronesis, so you bring the virtues and you have the ultimate virtue, which comes from the sacred rite, initiation. So the well-ordered and mindful phronesis soul follows its guide and is not ignorant of her present circumstances. Judging your circumstances. Whereas the soul that is passionately attached to the body, as I said before, fearfully flutters around that and around the visible place. Bingo, bango, bongo. So this is the opposite. The soul, oh, I can't do green. Let's just keep doing yellow. The soul that is passionately attached to the body fearfully flutters around that and the visible place. Okay? So we are fearfully fluttering around our physical body and the physical world because we are not following our guide. Follows the guide and is not ignorant, of our circumstances, which means we have, what's the opposite of not ignorant? I don't know. Knowledge? Dianoia? Phronesis? Trust? Probably all of those things together. So, if we are well ordered with our virtues and we have some phronesis, we are following our guide. If we are passionately attached to our body, oh yum, I live for cake. We are fearfully full of fear and will flutter around the body and the visible place. Notice, around. We are not entirely of the body or in the body in some way. We are around the body, which makes sense if we can separate from the body. Is the soul in body or is the body in soul? These are questions I hope we're picking up as we go, because they might pay off later. Hey, maybe at the end of the text, maybe 10 years later. But it's important to develop questions and bring them with us. Okay? The well-ordered and phronesis soul follows the guide, is aware of our circumstances, and is not passionately attached to the body and fearfully flutters around. Right. For a long time, struggling much and suffering much. Oh my God. I feel you, buddy. Being led away by force and with difficulty by her appointed Daemon. Okay? If you keep staying attached, you will struggle and you will suffer, and the Daemon will have to use force. You're learning so much about the Daemon. Led away by force and with difficulty by your soul's appointed Daemon. Right, we're not just behind the eyes. But when she arrives at that place where the others are, the impure soul, which has committed an unjust act, such as taking hand in unjust slaughter or traffics in such crimes, which are akin to those, and which are the activities of soul, So there's an impure soul or a pure soul. Committing unjust acts. Now, let's take a moment. Because this is a key word, let's nail it down for ourselves. Committing unjust acts. Pepikian. Pepikian. What does pepikian mean? Pepikian. Okay. Struggling to find Pepikian here. We might be out of luck. I think maybe it's a combination of two words, which is why I'm struggling to find it. Pepikian. These dictionaries are in Greek. I cannot read Greek. Alright, we're gonna have to find out about this. Pepikian. Okay, let's... Here we go. Got something. We have the first part of it. All right, we're not making much progress here. All right. We'll stay with committed an unjust act for Pepikian. Such as unjust slaughter or traffics and crimes, which are akin to those which and are the activities of souls which happen to be akin to such activities. Okay, so we are nurturing our soul by our activities, the activities of souls which happen to be akin to such activities. So we are nurturing our souls, we're making us like the activities, and vice versa. What our soul becomes like, we act. So this thing, hey, aren't we all entitled to our own opinions? Well, if your opinions you're held in the soul, then that will cause your actions. And your actions will change your opinions. And vice versa, we are nurturing our soul in a certain way, which will make our Daemon have to lead us with difficulty and force in the direction we're supposed to be going, because there are many branches and circuits in the journey from here to there. We have a Daemon guiding us. Okay. The soul is avoided and turned away by all, and are neither willing to be her fellow traveler or guide. This soul. Okay, so when an impure soul goes to that place, turned away by all, neither willing to be her fellow traveler or guide. Thus, on the other hand, self keeps wandering, completely at a loss, until a certain time should arrive, which, upon having been completed, surely then self is borne by necessity to her proper habitation. So it sounds like you go to a place, and no one wants to hang out, no one wants to walk with you, no one wants to be your fellow traveler in the Discord of this channel, on the YouTube and Twitch of this channel. No one wants to guide. practice the art of the logos together to develop and guide each other. You keep, and those, maybe lower on the ladder of the development, who are still learning the art of the logos. So you keep wandering at a loss until you are born again into your then self is born by necessity. There's a necessity for your reincarnation because you're wandering around completely at a loss, which would suck. But the soul that has completed life in a pure and measured way meets with the gods as fellow travelers and leaders. There's our fellow travelers and leaders, what we were talking about, what we're developing in our community, on our Discord, in these channels, and Twitch and YouTube. Fellow travelers and leaders. Sometimes we're going to be leading little dialectic, sometimes we're a fellow, but we're always a fellow traveler. Socrates said, hey, somebody else wants to lead the conversation, I'll follow. He wants people to play. And each self soon arrives at her own proper place. Okay, proper place, that's curious. Don't know what that means, but let's highlight it. The proper habitation, proper place. But there are many and wonderful habitations belonging to the earth. And self is neither as it is supposed to be by those who are used to talk about the earth in regards to her nature or her size, as I have been persuaded by someone. What do you mean by that, Socrates? For self has surely also heard much said about the earth, but not this which has convinced you. Thus I'd be glad to hear it. Okay, so Socrates is talking about, giving us a lot of truth bombs about the nature of the soul, the Daemon, following the soul. There are many branches and circuits, but you can experience the Daemon and in these rites, and by understanding the laws of the universe. That's what we're doing. If you're passionately attached to the body, you'll flutter around the body in the visible place. You will struggle a lot. The Daemon will have to force you in whatever way. Our activities have to be just as best as we can. The activities of the soul would be akin. The soul would be activities of souls which are akin to such activities. You're nurturing your soul by your activities. Again, more credence to virtues, to always be doing this. Okay, we will be lost without fellow travelers and leaders. But there are some wonderful habitations belonging to the earth. And there's another way of understanding the nature and size of earth, but not the way we have been normally talked about, persuaded by. Hang on a second. What does that mean? There's another way of understanding this earth, as well as the other realm, the invisible, the Hades. In that case, Simius, it does not indeed appear to me to take the art of Glaucus to set out in detail what is said. However, as to prove their truth, it has come to light for me to be more difficult than the art of Glaucus. And on the one hand, at the same time, I may equally not be able to do so. But even if I had the knowledge, it appears to me that my life, O Simius, may not be sufficiently long enough to tell the logos. But nothing keeps me from telling what I am convinced is the idea of the earth and the regions of self. Okay, so there is an idea of earth that we are not understanding by people like Glaucus, who teach us about what the nature of the earth is and her size. So he's going to lay on us some cosmic astronomy. There's not enough time to give us a big lesson about the true nature of this planet. Notice he's telling us about the next planet. He's telling us about our guide. He's telling us about how we should train ourselves here to go into that place well, about what happens if we don't, the significance of our nurturing the soul through virtuous actions. being left alone when you're in that other realm and having to reincarnate. But also, hey, there is another way of understanding this planet. Different nature and size of this planet we're in. So that's puzzling. What the heck is he talking about? You mean the Earth isn't just a physical ball of however many kilometers in diameter? Space debris rocketing through space? There's more to it? Yes. Wow. So he's already laid on some truth bombs about the nature of the Daemon, about the nature of our journey into the next life, why it's significant to fare well and be with divine providence in that place, which was the opening. Remember, at the opening of the text, Phaedo said he's going to fare well and have divine providence. What does that mean? Well, he's saying, hey, fellow travelers faring well and leaders. We have a Daemon. It's guiding us. The more we're attached to the body, and especially the more passionately we're attached to the body, the more fearfully we will be, the more we will flutter around a body in the visible place. We will struggle and we will suffer the more we're attached to the body, and we will not be in tune with our Daemon, who's been appointed to us to guide us, and it will have to be using force in some way. He's just dropping these truth bombs on our asses. And also there's a new way of understanding the planet that we're on right now. Wow. What is that? What is this better way of understanding this planet? And what are these wonderful habitations that are here? Many and wonderful habitations belonging to the earth. What is that? I don't know. Well, on that cliffhanger, and on those bombshells about the nature of our souls and the Daemon, what the heck is that? We know more about that. Good thing we've been holding on to a question about the Daemon this whole time, because now we're getting some logos, some terms to add into our structure of our question. So hey, hopefully you have a document open somewhere on your computer or on your notepad that you're working with. Dialectic on the Daemon. What if it exists? What if it isn't? Because now he's just given us a whole bunch of terms on what it is and how it functions. Definition and demonstration. So hopefully you're working on that. Why? Because the dialectic is the structure of the logos to develop dianoia, true understanding, which can awaken nous, direct experience. And by the way, wouldn't we want to directly experience the Daemon if it's our guide? So, very important, therefore, to be playing, to be doing it, to be developing your own dialectic on the Daemon. You don't have to get it right because it's a conversation. You will roll on. You will always improve. But be in the game. That's what we're going to do next time. Use that, bring it together, develop a dialectic of the Daemon, and then figure out what the heck is this better way of understanding the true nature of this planet we're on. What are these wonderful, many wonderful habitations that are here that we don't know about? Wow. Even if you're just listening along, structure it according to the dialectic. And when you have time, pull out a pad. If Daemon is, and side B if it isn't, and then do 1, 2, 3, 4. What can you say about it? How does it function? Divide it up. How does it function others to others, and how can you synthesize and unify it? That's matching Socrates. That's playing the game. Have a Word document open. Use it for your songwriting. Use it for your whatever art you're involved in. But yeah, it's okay to imagine it, but take that extra step to write it down. Give yourself 10 minutes. Start the game. Share it on Discord. Because why? Because it's not enough to just define it. It's not enough to just trust it. You have to demonstrate it. And here Socrates is saying it's the activities that we do that train our soul. It's the nurturing that we do. You gotta play. Look at what Socrates did. He did all this for us, and Plato wrote it all out. The least we can do is do a little dialectic. It can be 10 minutes. In a fun, hyper focus on it. 10 minutes. What do you know about what it is? Number one. Number two, how does it function? Self to others. Now those others, how do they relate to other others having been affected? And how can you unify that together, synthesis, and analyze it back on what you first started with about understanding the Daemon to see it in a new way. And then you will have learned, you will have upgraded. You see through your understanding. Which means you'll have a new level of development, so the next dialectic you do, the next day or the next whenever, it'll be even better. It will roll on. This is the kind of education and nurturing. This is the kind of activity that makes us well ordered. This is the kind of thing that opens us up to phronesis. And this is the nature, this is the nurturing and education of the soul that we can bring with us, so that when we go into that next place, we will have fellow travelers and leaders, and we will continue on our journey and not be stuck, not be, first of all, not struggle and suffer in this world, but also not be wandering and at a loss in the other world and have to reincarnate down again, maybe into a donkey. All right, so this is the significance, and this is what we're going to do next time. So between today and the next episode, do your own. Doesn't have to be perfect. Let's have a go. And then we'll pull out some terms together next time and see what we come up with. And maybe even learn about what's the true nature and size of this planet we're on. Oh, wow. Imagine that. That secret geology, a secret astronomy that he's passing on. Wow. Big cliffhangers. Thank you for joining me. Feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube to make people get it recommended if you think this is a good channel worth sharing. If you want to join on Discord, you can. If you want to join us along in the chat, you're welcome to for the live records on Twitch. And if you have the means and you think this is a channel worth supporting, you can support on Patreon, and that would be very greatly appreciated. And I hope to see you next time. Bring your puzzles, bring your wonder, and bring a dialectic in your back pocket. Why not?